Vanessa Ray has effortlessly won viewers' hearts as the new member of the Reagan family on the long-running CBS series Blue Bloods. Because who could resist a smile like hers? But you may not realize that, behind the scenes, the actor has had to deal with some serious issues. And her crisis didn't just greatly affect her, but also her husband, Landon Beard, whom she married in 2015. So, when the sun slowly started to shine again for Ray, both Ray and her husband realized that they had to reconstruct their entire relationship. And Ray says that the only way that they found their way through that mess was through therapy and one great book. But I'll tell you about that in a bit. First, let's backtrack for a second. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Some context is always helpful, don't you think? Blue Bloods has been on the air for 13 series now, with the latest season about to wrap up on the 10th of February, 2023. Ray stepped on board of the series as Eddie Janko during season 4 and has been much loved ever since. But while her character is usually pretty happy and bubbly on screen, the actor herself experienced a rather serious mental health crisis about 6 years ago. Ray had been suffering from severe depression, and in order to cope, she'd turned to unhealthy behaviors, including self-destructive ones. This included the excessive use and abuse of things like alcohol and drugs. Eventually, Ray got to such a low point in her life that she realized that she had to regain control over her life. But not until she'd publicly made a fool of herself and been confronted by reality first. That's when Ray found herself seeking help at a mental health facility. Ray would spend a total of 3 months there. During that time, she underwent super intense therapy, learning more and more about herself and what it is she needs to be stable. I was diagnosed with bipolar at that point, which made everything make so much sense to me, Ray revealed. The actor's time in treatment helped her to get to a much healthier state of being. And she says it also nudged her towards being more authentic and loving towards herself. But anyone who's ever been into contact with a mental health crisis will know getting help doesn't just make all of your problems disappear overnight. It's the most important step because it's the very first one, but that's really just the beginning, isn't it? Ray opened up about her experience with treatment and how it affected her marriage in an interview with Women on Top. As the actor explains, when the in-treatment has stopped, you have to go back to the real world. And Ray has gone through tremendous change while in treatment. She was starting to take accountability for herself, trying to be present. Basically, she was changing. But the problem was that before, Beard, Ray's husband, had been responsible for a lot of the things that Ray now wanted to do herself, which means that the couple had to go through a lot of therapy together as well. As Ray explains it, her husband is someone who just takes care of everything. And that's what he'd been accustomed to throughout their entire marriage and relationship before that. But it was vital for Ray that she truly learned how to take responsibility for herself. And so all of a sudden, I was like, no, 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 I don't need your help. It was difficult on our marriage, Ray confessed. Fortunately for Ray and Beard, the couple was able to stay together through it all. They learned how to change their patterns for the better and navigate around each other in a much improved way as well. And they didn't just survive those hard times with therapy alone. They used some important tools along the way that heavily padded their journey to a healthier relationship. Ray said that one of the most important things that got them through their extremely rough patch was actually a book, and she recommends everyone give it a go. It's called Codependent No More: How to Stop Controlling Others and Start Caring for Yourself. It's a self-help book by author Melody Beatty. Codependent No More teaches you that it's simply impossible to change someone else's behavior. And by the way, you deserve your own love, care, and affection as well. What is often the case with people who have mental health problems, suffer from addiction, like alcoholism, is that those who love them can get lost while trying to save them. But the sad truth is, people can really only help themselves. The thing is, not everyone knows how to get out of a cycle like this. or recognize that they're even in one. And in the case of Ray and Beard, the vital tools that Codependent No More teaches you help them build a much healthier, stable, and sustainable relationship. While it must have been hard to go through these mental issues and was probably quite lonely when it all went down, these days, Ray is actually really open about everything she went through. In fact, she seems pretty grateful for all the lessons she's learned through it all. And she can now recommend a great book to people who look up to her and may be struggling with similar problems. And by the way, Ray hasn't lost one bit of her amazing personality while she was fighting through one of the hardest periods of her life. In an interview with the Nerds of Color, the actor said that she rather thinks that Blue Bloods is a bit like Cinderella. Now, it's no secret that family is the real core of Blue Bloods, but who can resist a good romance? And let me tell you, the excitement was real when Eddie and Will Estes' Jamie finally gave in to their feelings after having danced around them for so long. And then they actually got married. Come on, that's great stuff. But to me, that doesn't really ring any bells in the corner of Cinderella, does it? So what does Ray think the connection is between the characters on Blue Bloods and the Disney classic? Well, first off, it's a little more specific than just Cinderella. Ray is really talking more about the second half of Cinderella. As she explains it herself, because they all really look at what good the characters are actually doing. You go to the ball, you think you're going to fall in love, you're going to change the world. Then after going to the ball, you're like, oh, so this is the ball, this is a pretty intense place to navigate. I guess that's true? While this seems to be a bit of an odd comparison, it kind of makes sense. A police officer is meant to serve and protect, the goal being putting away bad guys and thus keeping the world safe. That sounds easy enough, but once you're actually in that uniform, it's quite a different story. Ray's Eddie has been doing whatever she can to fight for victims and make the world a better place while also falling madly in love. And she did get her happily ever after. Sort of. In the wedding episode. So maybe Ray isn't so far off after all, and more importantly, it seems like Ray has had a bit of a Cinderella story herself as well. But at least in this case, love has won the day. And the actor herself has been living her little piece of happily ever after for a few years now. And that's all on Vanessa Ray and her husband worked through a difficult time with therapy.